Well folks, welcome to winter here on Test Drive. We're going to be doing a lot more trucks and SUVs over the next couple months. And as you can see here, even though we're filming this about just close to the end of November, we have already a lot of snow. So I hope you're prepared for it. Our spotlight is on this 2019 Ram 1500 Limited. This is the 5th generation Ram truck and the first to be completely sold under the Ram brand. Previous generation was a Dodge for a few years, and then they branched off as a Ram. We're going to be going over everything about this $83,000 fully loaded pickup truck to see if it's the one for you. So this is the limited trim, top of the end when it comes to the new Ram 1500. So we're only going to be talking about this trim. Later on in 2019, I have the Ram Rebel booked, so we'll be talking about the more sport-oriented version of it. But I know that there are different features and different kit that you can get, but we're going to be focusing specifically on this truck here and what you get at the top end. Now you're probably also thinking, geez, that is a really tall truck. Are you sure it's a 1500 and not a heavy-duty 2500 because of how high it is? Well, I'm sure you already know if you're a truck enthusiast, but this car has a 4-corner air suspension system. And unlike pretty much every other light-duty pickup truck I've ever driven, it ditches the rear leaf spring suspension for 4 shock absorbers with air compressors to be able to raise and lower it. And as you can see here, it's going from the off-road 2 mode, which is the absolute highest it can be, down into the entry-exit mode. It actually lowers it by quite a bit. The entry-exit mode itself is 2 inches lower, so that it's easier for you to be able to get in and out. Now, somebody like me, it's not a problem, but I have a 5-year-old. So for her, it makes a big difference being able to lower it down so that she can get into it. It's still going. Now there's 5 modes, as I mentioned. Entry-exit, which is where it is about now. You've got the Aerodynamic Mode, which is a little bit higher, Normal Mode, Off-Road 1, and Off-Road 2. You can control it from the inside, and we'll talk about it there, but you can lower it to the entry-exit mode from the key fob, which is really cool. The key fob also has the remote starter and the trunk release, because there is a not power-operated liftgate, but it does open gracefully. Now I want to talk about the front end. Hopefully our camera equipment doesn't freeze here. It does feel like minus 25 degrees Celsius right now, so it is a little cold, and we're probably going to be expecting that type of temperature for the rest of the next few months as we're doing test drive winter mode here. Up front you have full LED headlights with LED fog lights. The headlights are adaptive. They will turn, maybe not as much as we see on something like a Mazda crossover, but they will turn enough that you can get around the corner and see. Also, if you have the high beams on or you don't like using your fog lights, they will work as cornering lamps. We actually saw that with a number of vehicles, Volvo's non-hybrid cars, and even a few weeks ago we did the Volkswagen Jetta, and it uses their fog lights as well. So same thing, fog lights will turn on if you're turning. If you've got them on anyway, nothing changes. The lights will still bend. You can certainly turn that off if you want to. You have automatic high beams, they're LED as well. You also have front parking sensors, which we didn't see on the 2019 Ford F-150. And it's an important thing to have. We think especially at the $83,000 price point, you should have front parking sensors. You have a 360-degree camera system, works very well. And there's a lot of safety tech. Base model with the non-option anything limited, you basically get blind spot and rear cross traffic alert. But this truck has the limited group 1 package, which adds things like adaptive cruise control, the advanced brake assist, forward collision, lane keep assist, park assist, and something I'm not a huge fan of, we'll talk about it at the back, but brake assist when you're backing up. We talked about it about a year ago now with the 2017 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now on the front also you have active air shutters, and you do have the 5.7 liter Hemi with cylinder deactivation. On the Limited, this is pretty much it. They also have an e-torque option, which has a very small hybrid motor to it. It doesn't seem to change the output. The vehicle still has 395 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque, no matter which Hemi engine you go with. But the hybrid is there as an option if you want it. But let's move around the side now, because there's a lot to talk about just on the side of this truck before moving to the back. Now there's a couple of things I want to talk about here on the side, such as the parking sensors. With the 2019 Ford F-150 Platinum that we did, there's actually a parking sensor near the front doors. That helped with the park assist feature. With the Ram, it's still on the front bumper area, and it'll be on the back too. But they do have the parking sensors pointing to the side to help with the park assist feature, which does both parallel and perpendicular parking. Now you have power folding mirrors here. They're not automatic. I've tried everything, so when you lock the car, they won't automatically fold. Maybe there's a setting somewhere. We'll talk about Uconnect on the inside, but so far I haven't been able to figure out how to do it when you lock the car. So you do have to do it manually, but what can you do? You also have automatic running boards. When you open up the door, they'll come down. I also haven't been able to find an option to keep them open. So example, today we took the truck through the car wash. Would have been nice to have those out to wash. Couldn't find the option for it. You can either turn them on automatically or you can turn them off. But that's it. There's no deployment like we saw in the F-150 or the GMC Sierra Denali. This truck is optioned with the 22-inch rims. The wheels on here are 285/45 R22s. They are all-season tires. They're from Goodyear. I really wish that they were winter tires at this point, but here in Montreal, it's a little hard to get all the press cars swapped over to winter tires, so it's been interesting over the past couple days because it has snowed a lot here, and I would certainly have preferred winter tires. It gets the job done, but please, if you're driving in a climate that has snow, it gets cold, please buy winter tires. Car also has a remote starter. We've seen that pretty much on every other Chrysler product. You lock the car, you push the button twice, it starts up, runs for about 10-15 minutes, and then it'll turn off if you haven't started the car on your own. There's also option on this vehicle, the anti-spin differential at the back. You also have a 124-liter fuel tank. Oh my God, my bank account this week is gonna be terrible. So 124-liter tank, that's also an option, and you should be able to get a much better range out of that. We're looking right now at about 800, 900 kilometers. We've done too much in-town stuff right now that it's really not worth it, but we will take it on our test loop to talk about that. Aside from that, we talked about the air suspension. You can see it's much lower here, especially when we're on the side profile. It does help to get in and out of things. My garage, for example, you pretty much have to have it in park mode for it to be able to fit underneath the garage door. So I really like it. I think it's a cool feature and something that we don't see on any other trucks right now, but I'm sure the other manufacturers are going to jump on board real quick. So let's go around the back, talk about the couple features there, and then we'll hop inside where it's warm. You know, I really hate having to bring up the Alfa Romeo Stelvio video that we did, but if you've watched it, you'll know that I wasn't overly impressed with the way that the car was configured for the press fleet. Figure a brand new car, go all out, put all the options on it, make the journalists happy. That's what they've done for this, which I'm really happy about. There's a couple things back here, like the Trifold Tonneau cover. It just makes winter so much easier. You fold it up. There's some hooks on the inside. We're not going to go over how it works, but you basically clamp it to the bed so that this stays in place, keeps the snow on the top rather than you having to brush it out of the truck. Because something that we talked about on Instagram this week, a lot of people here in Canada, not just Quebec, not just this town, but a lot of people here in this country do not clear the snow off properly with their cars. And it is dangerous, especially if you have a truck, there's a big piece of ice that's on the back of your bed, you don't clear it off, it could fly off, it could damage somebody's car, it could kill somebody. So please, for the love of God, if you are not capable of clearing off your car, don't drive. Okay, it's simple. Please, it's not for you, it's for other people on the road that you're putting at risk. And I want to use this opportunity because every single year on Reddit, I see dozens of videos of people's cars who get destroyed from idiots who don't clear off their cars. So if you're somebody who doesn't clear off their car, you are an idiot. Now let's talk about the rest of the truck here. You do have an easy open rear lift gate. Comes down, you're able to get into it. It's not any easier than it would be for a regular truck. Now maybe if you get something like the Tradesman, there are different ways to get into it perhaps, but from what we've seen, this is about it. And the reason why I'm not overly thrilled with it, because both the GMC Sierra / Chevy Silverado have a way to get into the back. They actually have a different system where the trunk is set up into two positions, so you fold it flat and then it opens up again for another step. A few months ago, we did the F-150 Platinum. It had a little bar that came out with a little step that came out of the back to make it easier to get in. The F-150 also had side steps and steps built into the bumper. This truck doesn't have any of that, but to be fair, on some trims you can get cargo compartments in the side of the truck. So as I said, we're only talking about this vehicle here. Other trucks in Ram's lineup might have those features, but again, considering this is an $83,000 truck, we would have liked to have seen it. You've got a trailer hitch on the back. It's a Class 4 trailer hitch. You have an electronic trailer brake system and rear parking sensors, which assist with the rear braking system. Let's jump inside though, because I'm cold. I'm sure you guys are cold just watching it. It's so cold. So let's jump in and talk about the inside because there's a lot going on with the inside of this Ram 1500. The interior of the Ram 1500 Limited is outstanding. I have to say it. I really like it. It's a big upgrade from the previous generation, but then also in terms of the quality of the materials and the way they've designed it really does stand out. Now it's interesting. The Ford F-150 we did, 2019 model year, there wasn't much different about the interior, but we mentioned as well that that was a previous, carryover year. 2014 was the first year of production for the F-150. Now the Ram and Chevy GMC versions have been updated for 2019. So of course Ford's going to look a little behind, but we're going to be having both the Chevy and GMC in the new year. I think you'll be able to see when we do those videos, if you compare it back to this, the Ram is looking forward towards what's next, what people want out of their top-end trucks, and they're not just playing catch-up. I mean, they really have set the standard for trucks in general for the next couple of years, because there's a lot going on, and it wasn't just, hey, we're going to add a couple features, change it a little bit. I mean, they wanted to make sure they built a truck that would last for a while. Now let's talk about that. We're going to go kind of slowly through the truck here because there is so much to talk about. First off, I want to talk about the 7-inch cluster computer. It is very configurable. The interior portion of it has things like vehicle info, speed, driver assist. You can also customize things through there, trip information and whatnot. A lot of information there just on that. But then everything else is customizable. The left and right side of the center screen, you can have things like your average fuel economy, the menu system, oil temperature, things like that. Range as well, if you wanted to. I mean, you can do anything you want. And then there's 4 corners of the screen that you can put other things. So I have it set up with the range in the top, left side, the temperature, which says -14 right now. You add on the windshield, we're looking at that -25 portion. Lower right side is the time, and lower left is your trip A, for example. So you can see how far we've driven. But you can customize all of that and have any information you want on top of the analog tachometer, speedometer, your coolant temperature, and whether your tank is full or not, that 124-liter tank. Now, the only thing about the tank gauge, it doesn't actually have like a half mark. They're all the same almost. You'd have to look really close to see which ones are the actual quarter, half, and empty, essentially. I mean, the empty one's easy, it's red. But where it is for half and a quarter, it's almost the same thing. So I would have liked to see maybe something a little different, a little bit longer for those, because it is divided into 8ths. So you really do have to look a little close to see where you're at. But I guess it's not overly bad. I mean, just look at the gauge, but whatever. You have a push button start, something that we are only getting now on the GMC Sierra. And then everything else is pretty nice. I mean, you've got this wood trim that almost looks like jeans. Right? It's got this jean design to it where you've got the wood interlaced almost with a piece of string. I think it looks really nice, especially with the black interior, which I'm not usually a huge fan of. I prefer color, but man, it looks nice. So you've got the wood there. You've got leather on the dashboard, leather above the center console. Some plastic parts here and there, yes, that's true, but it's not that bad. Steering wheel is updated. It does use the new 3-dimensional version of the Ram's Head logo, something that you saw on the back there, which I personally prefer. We didn't really talk about the design of the truck, but overall I find that this is a really good looking truck because it's not in your face. It doesn't have the huge 8-foot lettering on the back that says Ram. It's just the Ram's Head where it should be. It's a good size for it. So you've got that there. Then all the other controls, we see that on pretty much every other Chrysler car, where you've got your volume and track select behind the steering wheel, then cruise control options, a gear limiter, so you can limit the 8-speed transmission up or down, and then controls for the cluster computer there. Pretty nice. I don't know if the top part of this is real wood. Could be. It looks more like a plastic designed to look like the wood. Same thing with the bottom area here. I could be wrong though, but it does have the same design. Now the big important information is the 12-inch Uconnect screen here. It's set up so you can actually use it as almost 2 separate 8.4-inch Uconnect screens. Your home menu allows you to decide whether you want something like your navigation, media, comfort, phone, or Sirius XM travel link. So I usually have navigation on top and then my music, my media at the bottom. If you do have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto and you're using it, it will take up where your navigation would go, but then you can go back into the full screen 12-inch navigation through the home buttons at the bottom. Now I want to spend a minute talking about it because it is important. It is essentially Uconnect 4 on a larger scale. We did like the update that FCA put in for Uconnect 4. We found that it was much more responsive, worked a lot better with our system. One complaint that we actually had with the Challenger, and we weren't sure if it was an iPhone related issue or the Challenger related issue, when you're listening to Bluetooth audio through the iPhone, you'll hear the audio change. It goes from sounding pretty decent, pretty good actually for Bluetooth, to sounding almost like it's muffled a little bit, like you're listening through a shower or something. It's weird, and it'll do that throughout no matter what. You switch it over to USB and you're fine. So just a little note there. And now, like I said, there is a lot to talk about when it comes to the screen here. I mentioned that you can split up the home screen into 2 sections. You can switch them through. It's pretty easy that way. You've got your quick links at the bottom. So for example, here we've got media, controls for your seats, for heated seats up front, ventilated seats up front, heated steering wheel, Uconnect apps, navigation, your phone, and then easy access to the backup camera. Thank you, Chrysler, for that, making you not have to go through the menu system to find it. I find it insanely useful to have it there. Now, the thing I'm not a huge fan of is something we talked about with the Volvo setup. There's just too much option here. You go into the system settings here, and there's just no end to options here. You've got pretty much everything: language, display, units, voice setting, clock, camera, safety and driving, mirrors and wipers, brakes, lights, doors and locks, auto on, comfort and remote start, engine off, suspension, trailer brake, audio settings, Bluetooth, Sirius XM, and a reset button. That's just the main menu system, and then each one of these has stuff to go through. But for the most part, it works well enough. It's not my favorite setup, but if we're thinking to the only 2 cars that we've driven this year with a portrait mode setup, it works better than Volvo's. It is responsive, it is quick. I've had no main issues with it. We did post on Twitter this week that we're having issues with XM radio data, and I'm not sure if it's a Chrysler issue or an XM issue, where the actual information will pop up for about a minute and then it will disappear and say there's no channel information. A software update was performed on this truck the second day we had it, and it didn't make a difference. So something to note, it's just one of the issues that we're having today. You have dual zone automatic climate control up front. Controls at least are built in to the side of the screen here, so it's not something that you have to touch to get through. You do have physical buttons for it. Same thing with volume and browsing your channels. Just below the screen, you've got your trailer brake assist. We don't have anything hooked up, so I can't test it. You've got your ride height controller. They flip up or down. Traction control, tow mode, front and rear parking sensors. Now, why is that important? No truck so far that we've driven has an option to disable just the front or just the rear parking sensors. If you're towing something, you don't want the parking sensors on the back to be on, so you want to be able to turn those off. But then on every other truck, you have to turn off the front ones as well. Unless, of course, you're driving a Ford F-150, you just don't have them. So with this, you can turn off the front ones independently. That way, if you're driving a trailer, you can still use your front parking sensors. So good on Chrysler, thinking ahead and thinking about what these vehicles are being used for. So excellent marks from us when it comes to that feature. Moving down again, you have a CD player, something else that people ask about. You have 2 USB inputs and an auxiliary input up here. There's 5 USB ports in this car in total. 3 of them are used for input, 2 of them are used just for charging. Now the center area here is where things get really exciting if you're like me and you like storage options. There is so much customization and what you can do with this. But basically, the setup that I have right here now, you can have cup holders at the front, they'll pop open, and then a second area which you can use for, I don't know, change. There is change compartments in there that you can put coins in, and then there's a small area to store it in. That whole section will move up. There's 2 modes. One, you can have a little bit of access to below it, and then you can push it back again a little bit more. They will lock into place. And below there, you actually have your wireless charger. It's Qi compatible, so it works with the iPhone 8, iPhone 10 as well. And you've got a 115 volt, 400 watt outlet below that. There's actually a little bit of extra storage underneath that section as well. So good amount of storage there. I have absolutely no complaints about it. I think it's set up very well. Now, if you slide this portion back, you have your armrest. It has the limited branding in it with these stitched decals that they have throughout. It's really nice. It's a subtle little touch that they've added to it. This section folds up. You have a good amount of storage there with another USB outlet, but then it also flips up again. There's a second button. You've got a compass built in with some conversion information there. I actually don't know how easy it is to see it if you're in the truck because you have to turn around basically to see it. But then you've got another storage compartment in here, and there's a little flap that flips up as well. So if you just want your items to be right here all the time, the flap flips up, keeps it in place, and the flap has a little Easter egg. You've got the Ram's heritage from the first generation up until the previous one. So you can see that there. I think it's really cool. Good amount of storage there. I think I could easily fit my Lenovo ThinkPad in there. You can put an iPad, different things. If you go get some groceries, you want some storage in there. Lots of space, lots of ways to be able to configure it. So I really like that. Plus there's storage along the side. where your footrest goes. Same thing in the door. I mean, you can put things absolutely everywhere. And if you're somebody who uses a lot of things, if you bring a lot of things with you, you need them in your truck, storage is everywhere, especially two above your computer cluster here. There's a little space there with another 12-volt outlet. Right side of the dashboard, yet another storage compartment. There's a button for the top part of a glove box. It is illuminated, so if you put something like your wallet or anything else that's long, you can probably put a submarine sandwich in there if you wanted to. You have light in there so you can see into it, plus the regular glove box below it. And as I mentioned, the door cards have a lot of storage as well. So there's a lot. I mean, I know we're going in depth with it. It's going to be a longer video on this truck, but there's so much to go over. So a lot of storage, a lot going on up here, a lot of features that you would expect from a vehicle at $83,000. And really, I can't think of anything that it's missing. I mean, it's got a HomeLink, it's got the dual pane panoramic moonroof up top. You can open the roof from the controls here. You can open up the rear window if you want to. There's a lot that makes sense, and it's so well laid out that really kudos to Chrysler. They really put a lot of engineering into this vehicle to make it make sense. Now, one other feature that comes with that limited Group 1 is the 19-speaker Harman Kardon audio system. It sounds pretty good. I like it. It's definitely better than what we found on the F-150. And we're going to be having, as I mentioned, the GM trucks in a couple weeks, so we'll know for sure. But 19 speakers is really good for any vehicle, regardless of what it is. So very nice system on here. Sounds good. Plug in your phone, listen to XM radio. It works really well. Now, before we go on a road test, talk about the backseat area. There's a little bit going on back there. Much like other trucks, you don't see too much. There are a few little options, such as ventilated and heated rear seats on the outboard, and then the seats do fold a little bit. You can lean back. You have 45 inches, I believe, of legroom, but you can recline the seats back a little bit, so it's a little bit more comfortable for passengers back there. And there's two vents, plus USB outlet and another charger. So if you have kids, they need to charge up a device, there's options for you there. They have some airflow, they have heat, which seems to be pretty standard for any truck now, but ventilation is something that we haven't seen on any other vehicles. Plus the armrest will come down. It is a different style armrest. It would actually remove the whole center seat, but it folds flat to give you a little armrest there. Now, as I mentioned, there's nothing else that's really missing on this truck. The only thing the F-150 had in terms of major features in this car over the Ram 1500 here, ambient lighting, which this has, but it's just a white light, and massaging front seats. This truck doesn't have massaging seats. If you think, why would you need that? Drive the F-150 and you'll find out. But now we're going to take it on our road test to talk about how this truck performs, especially in this crappier weather that we're having here, and talk about everything else that's important to you if you're in the market for a new light-duty pickup truck. This past week we've had a lot of different temperatures and climates. First off, we started earlier this week with the Ram 1500 with a lot of snow. We had quite a long stretch of snowstorm that was pretty much 3 full days of nonstop snow. It wasn't like a lot of quantity of snow, it was just a lot of snow coming down for a very extended period of time. So we got to put this truck through some snow, and now we're putting it through some rain because we really just can't win. We can't have really dry temperatures here, dry climate. But I did mention it when we were talking on the outside. This truck has essentially a limited slip rear differential, and it's not really the greatest when it comes to anti-slip. I know that's what they call it, but it's not anti-slip for the tires, it's an anti-slip differential. And some people on Ram forums have talked about how you'll actually lose traction the way that it's set up. So maybe not option it if you're looking for a truck that's good as like an actual winter car. If you're using it for a specific reason, if you need a limited slip rear differential and you know why you need it, then you can definitely option it. But probably for this truck, I would skip it considering. But I want to talk a little bit about how this truck performs on the road, because like I said, crappy weather earlier this week with all-season tires. It did not do exceptionally well. We had it in four-wheel drive high mode essentially the entire time we had snow. So it's one of the reasons why I recommend getting winter tires, because all-wheel drive helps, certainly a plus, but winter tires are key in any winter climate, so definitely get those. But let's talk about, first of all, the powertrain on this. There's really only two options available for the Ram 15. But let's talk about the powertrain here. There's only really two options available, and I think that's one of the complaints people have with this vehicle. For the 5th generation, Chrysler has really just carried over the Pentastar V6 and the 5.7 liter Hemi, although the V6 only comes now with the e-torque, which adds a very small hybrid system to it to boost essentially start-stop power. And same thing with the Hemi. This one doesn't have it, so we're not going to talk about it, but the e-torque system is what they call a mild hybrid. It doesn't actually power the vehicle, it just regens the battery, allows you to have easier stop and go. If you come to a stop, essentially the engine will turn off, but then that super duper small tiny hybrid motor will allow you to start up a little bit easier than you would on a normal system, because on this non-e-torque version of the 5.7 liter Hemi, there is no auto start stop, which probably for most people is not an issue. We tend to not like them a whole lot. It depends on how it's integrated and set up. Something like the F-150 that we just did, there was an override for it, which was nice. So I mean, it's going to be different no matter how you use it, but there is no auto start stop with this truck as configured. Now you have 395 horsepower, 410 pound-feet of torque. Again, that's what we saw with the previous generation Ram 1500, so there's no real change there. But how does it really stack up compared to the competition? Well, like I said, this is the biggest engine. It's the only one really available for the Ram. Both Ford and Chevrolet/GMC have slightly different options depending on what you go for, especially at the top trim. Now, we just drove the F-150 2019, but it was the diesel version. If you go with the new Limited for the F-150, they were using the same engine on the Raptor. It's Ford's 3.5 liter EcoBoost high output engine, and it does 450 horsepower and 510 pound-feet of torque. So you do get that now on the top end vehicle, which makes sense. So if you were to compare those two, there's certainly a lot more power when it comes to the Ford. But we haven't had a chance to drive it in the F-150. We did in the Lincoln Navigator, so you can find out more if you want about that engine in that vehicle. Now, let's talk quickly about the GMC Sierra. We did do the 2018 model. We do have the 2019 coming up. Base engine has a 355 horsepower, 383 pound-foot of torque, Ecotec 3 5.3 liter V8 engine. But you can also upgrade to the 6.2 liter Ecotec 3, which has 420 horsepower, 460 pound-feet of torque. So you do get more power if you want. Again, this is essentially as high up as you can get with the Ram 1500. But I know you guys want to see what this 5.7 liter Hemi can do. And it's a big truck. It's not the fastest. We just talked about some of the numbers, but we're here to dig. It's a little wet. We're in four-wheel drive mode. There's no sport option for this. You basically just have a gear limiter if you want. We're not going to be using that, and there's no manual shifting for it either. So we're just going to go. Oh yeah, you can feel that torque pick up, and we're getting close to 100. Woo, that's pretty quick. Oh yeah, especially compared to the Ford F-150 with the Power Stroke V6 turbo diesel engine. There's certainly a lot more power with this. And yeah, I mean, if you're towing something, you're going to have no issues. Definitely check though. Again, we talk about it when we're doing any of the pickup trucks, because there's so much you can customize, both with the bed size, the cab size, the engine, the differential, 4x4, two-wheel drive. There's so much that goes into it. I'm not going to talk about towing numbers, but if you are looking for a truck, definitely do the research first to make sure you configure it the way that you need it to for you to be able to tow, whether it's a boat, a trailer, another car, whatever you're using your truck for. Do the research first. All the manufacturers, Ford, GM, Chrysler, they all have excellent information on their websites about what the towing capacity and payload capacity are for all of their trucks, no matter how you slice it. So take a look at that. Back to what we've been doing here on Test Drive. We haven't been really doing a lot of truck stuff this week just because the weather sucks and we don't have any truck stuff to really do. We can talk about fuel economy. Now, it's one of the reasons why it's so important that we've started doing our test loop. 100-kilometer test loop gives us a benchmark for every single car that we do. And it did 12.4 liters per 100 kilometers, which, you know, is not bad. We haven't done any other light-duty pickup trucks yet on our test loop, so I can't tell you if it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a good number based on previous trucks that we've done not on a test loop. And the reason why that's good is because the fuel economy on this truck hasn't been good because of the way we've been using it. Because we haven't gone too far with it, it's really just been in town, stop and go, stop and go. The fuel economy has not been very good. As of filming this segment right here, which is just before we're going to be doing about another 200 kilometers to drop it off in Montreal and do some other things, we're going to be driving a little bit more. We've done 467 kilometers. We've averaged 19.1 liters per 100 kilometers. And that was a lot worse, I'm telling you. Before I did the test loop and before this weekend, was really in-town stuff. I had done maybe 200 kilometers, and our average was closer to 28 liters per 100 kilometers, just because it was all in town, really not efficient driving. So fuel economy is important. I know some people complain, well, who cares about it? It's a truck. I don't care about fuel economy. You will. You really will. I mean, with this 124 liter gas tank, if you're using even the 19.1 liters that we have right now, which is not very good at all, 20 liters per 100 kilometers on a 124 liter tank, you're getting 600 kilometers maximum. If you can do closer to 12, you're going to be doing closer to 1,000 kilometers per tank. So you can really stretch that number if you drive it a little bit better than we have it. And like I said, it's just because it's been in town stuff. And I think that with the mild hybrid system, it would help a little bit, even though Chrysler does use a cylinder deactivation technology with the 5.7 liter Hemi. It doesn't come on too often. Basically tells you on your screen whether you're in eco mode or not, and it just tells you that it's kicked down some of the cylinders. It doesn't happen all the time, so the mild hybrid might help you with a little tiny bit of fuel economy. So for the extra additional cost, I don't think it's that much compared to how much the truck already costs. I think it's probably worth it. And I am hoping we get a chance to test out the hybrid systems on the Ram 1500 and Ram 2500 if they're going to be offering it, some sort of version of that for 2019 or 2020, depending on what model year. I do know that a new heavy-duty truck is coming, and we hopefully are going to be getting that when it comes out. So we talked about winter driving, we talked about the limited slip differential in the back, we talked about performance. But what about ride and handling? It still feels like a truck, but I have to say it feels a little less like a truck with this four-corner active suspension setup. I really do like the fact that you essentially don't have leaf springs in the back. It's a little bit more SUV-like, which I think is good. Now, we haven't put anything in the trunk to be able to test out whether or not it really makes a difference for those back there, but I find that it is a little smoother. I find that the ride is good, the handling is good on this. I've had no issues. I certainly prefer it over both the 2019 Ford F-150 that we had and the 2018 GMC Sierra Denali that we had, especially the other Ford F-150s we've driven this year. I find that this has just a slightly smoother ride, and the power delivery is good too. We talked about that. It certainly helps. So I think overall there's a lot of good going on with this truck. They've really thought about it in a different way. But I know that this system isn't necessarily new, and in fact, it's probably the same system or a very lightly modified version of the one that we drove on the 2017 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It works really well, and I like it. I think that it adds something different to this truck. I mean, when you think about it, especially compared to the F-150 that we did, you're losing out on really teeny tiny features. I mean, this thing on the inside, what you lose compared to the F-150, the ambient lighting, I'd say that the Ford is better. Ford has a power tilt steering wheel. It has massaging seats. That's about it. But then you gain a whole bunch of stuff too. You have a much different infotainment system here. With the Ram, the rear seats, you can recline them back, which is something we haven't seen on a truck before. So there's different things here and there, but I think the biggest, obviously, mechanical difference really is the air ride suspension, and I really like it. The fact that you can raise it up to go off-road, lower it down for aerodynamic, get it into the lowest mode possible for parking has certainly helped my daughter get in and out of the truck. I think it's a nice system to have, and I think it works really well. The cost is not that much if you're adding it on, if it wasn't included with the trim that you're purchasing. So I think that overall, it's probably not going to be the most expensive part of the truck to have to fix down the road. Like I said, if it is using the exact same system on the Jeep, it's probably going to be less than something like a Mercedes S-Class. And that's the thing, it makes this truck stand out in comparison to the rest. It's the only truck on the market that I know of that offers a four-corner air ride suspension. So it's a plus. Maybe not for everybody, but it is for me. While a lot of the changes and added features on the 5th generation Ram 1500 might not cater to the ultra-traditional pickup truck buyer, we feel the forward-thinking engineering and design sets a new benchmark for light-duty pickup trucks, especially after previewing what GM launched for 2019 with their own Silverado and Sierra lines. Overall, the Limited's interior and exterior design is a strong like for us, without the over-the-top Ram branding like you get on the Rebel trim, but keeping the design in line with what you'd expect out of a vehicle at this price point. The 12-inch Uconnect screen is also a plus for us, despite the small Sirius XM data issue we had and the confusing system menus. The 4-corner air suspension is also a nice feature we really liked, giving us a ride we haven't experienced in a pickup truck before. LED headlights up front are excellent at night, and the overall interior storage makes this truck a top contender for those that have a lot of things that they need to bring with them. Now, we don't use this term lightly, but the 2019 Ram 1500 Limited is near perfection for what we'd expect out of a light-duty pickup truck, and we really had to look hard for flaws. The fuel economy was the biggest hit for us, with a 12.4 liter per 100 kilometer or 18 US mpg fuel economy on our 100 kilometer test circuit, and 13.6 liters per 100 kilometers or 17 US mpg after our 847 kilometer week with it. The numbers aren't awful, but compared with both Ford F-150 models we drove this year, they are a little worse. The small issues we had with the Bluetooth audio were also annoying. As mentioned, the sound quality will fluctuate throughout playback with the iPhone 8 Plus during our testing. And finally, a tailgate access system would be nice. GM has a dual-step tailgate, and Ford opted for a hidden fold-out step and rail. Both are excellent options for easy access to the bed, and something Ram can look for in future model years. But overall, this was a seriously great truck to drive, and one we would consider if we were in the market for a top-of-the-line light-duty truck. This kind of innovation is what pushes the industry forward, and we expect the teams in Dearborn and Detroit to play catch-up over the next couple years. But what do you think about this 2019 Ram 1500? We heard from a lot of people on social media during our week with it. Is this new interior something you'd like to have, or do you prefer the traditional approach to pickup truck design? Let us know in the comments below and tell us what's on your mind. Does this new Ram set the new standard for the segment, or is it just designed to get us journalists excited while the truck buyers skip out on it?